Happy Friday, my friends. Glad you're here. Hello. Properties. Okay, I think that should work. Happy Friday. Okay, I just got word in on Phoenix. Matt Dillahunty and I are confirmed November 9th for Phoenix. And I should have a link on my Facebook page, and I'll just share it everywhere I can. I don't have, they're still updating the website. And so, but I'll get the info. Yes, I think it's already at sethandrews.net/events as well. So anyway, this is a recording session. I'm just kind of recording, vamping, taking phone calls on whatever subject you want to talk about. Call number is right there on the screen. So if you have something on your mind, now's the time. You can call and sound off. You question, comment, whatever. It can be about atheism, religion. It can be about something else. I really don't care. It's Friday. But I thought we'd spend a little time together. There's some weird reverb, you say? Hold, please. Okay. Let's see if that fixes it. The problem is we did a Windows 10 update, mandatory update, and it just jacked up my world. It just irritates me. It just irritates me. And Windows 10 has been good to me. I haven't had really any trouble like I had with Vista or any of those things. But the update has jacked up my OBS software in a big way. And so now it's like, it's just the first world problems. First world problems. Anyway, if you have a comment or question, you have something on your mind you want to vent about, sound off, anything that's going on, and there's a lot to talk about. With Trump announcing that he was the chosen one and retweeting that he was the king of Israel, that's been on my mind. And some guy with a God complex is literally announcing he's the chosen one and the most anticipated figure since Jesus or God. That's just whatever. What else was it? Was going on? It'll come to me. Anyway, the switchboard's wide open. Phone numbers on the screen. And the formal portion of this broadcast will actually release in, I think, a week and a half or so. I've got Rachel Oates, my special guest for the show next Tuesday. And she's just a real joy. I had the chance to meet her in Dallas, Texas, and she does a lot of activism. She does a lot of, sort of speaking out against anti-vaxxers, and she and Kent Hovind have been having this online volley back and forth. And Kent Hovind is just one of those guys just desperately grasping for relevance in almost the year 2020. And so Rachel Oates, I guess, is under his skin. So he's like, and it's one of those cheap shot kind of deals. And atheists have been known to do this from time to time too, but, grab like a shot of her in a very unflattering pose or mouth open or something, and he'll use that as the screen grab for her video. I mean, there's just cheap shots like that. We see it done a lot in the media. Interesting, true story. I just had lunch at a place in Tulsa called the India Palace, and it's good. Oh, they have such delicious food. And so Natalie and I are having lunch there, and we actually had a conversation that went something like this. She looked at me and she says, "I think we need a tentacle." And I said, "No, we don't need a tentacle. I think we need a tentacle. Swamps have tentacles." Now, I'm already thinking there's someone in the table next to us who's probably wondering what the hell we're talking about. I don't know. That's not necessarily a swamp. It's just a floor. I mean, it doesn't need to be a swamp. No, it's green. It's a swamp. You need a tentacle. Well, I don't know how do you make a tentacle? How is it? What's a tentacle made of? I don't know. Call Howie. Howie knows. Howie's got a tentacle. Do you have a photograph? Yeah. Haven't you seen the photograph of the tentacle? Well, pull it up. Let's take a look at it. Oh, Howie's got a great tentacle. Okay, we need a tentacle. We just had this conversation. It was just an hour ago. Okay. And it's because here we are already planning. Actually, we're right on top of the holiday, but we're planning our Halloween display for the outside of the house. And those who know me know that I don't go halfway. I've got the theatrical fog machine, and I've got the hue of the lights going up over the entire house, and I've got the gravestones, and I've got all of these other things. Well, I was introduced to the concept of the laser floor, and you buy these little lasers. They're not expensive, and they have a little stand on them, and you can mount them, and they shoot this beam. Now, the best way I can describe the beam is, do you remember the opening scene in Aliens, James Cameron's film, when the salvage crew stumbles upon Ripley's ship and this machine comes in and scans, and it's got a laser beam this one's vertical, and it goes all the way from the left to the right to scan the room to see what's in there. And using fog and smoke, you've got this really wispy effect in there that's just awesome. It's just awesome. Well, I've already got the fog machine, so all I needed was this little $60 laser. And so I'm thinking, I need a laser floor for Halloween. Oh, yes, it shall be done. I've already been doing some testing. I was out last night. And people are probably wondering, what the hell is that man doing? So we've got what looks like a green, swampy, watery, lakey floor thingy, okay? And then I'm going to put some characters inside. There's going to be some hay bales. I'm doing a portal to hell that's going to have smoke coming out of it. And Natalie thinks, well, if it's a swampy, lakey, lasery thingy, you need a tentacle. You need a big tentacle. How do I make a tentacle? For outdoors, like paper mache would immediately fall to pieces. Is it PVC pipe? Is it something else? And then you wrap mesh over it, and then you treat the mesh somehow? I need to know, because apparently I'm making a tentacle for Halloween 2019. And we were sitting there at lunch, and it was like, we need a tentacle, honey. Are you sure? Do we need a tentacle? Yeah, I think we need a tentacle. I'm sure people with no context thought we were out of our minds. By the way, must have been 4 tables down at that very same meal. There was a lady praying over her meal like it was the last prayer she would ever give in her life. My goodness. It's a buffet. It's a wonderful place called India Palace, and their food is just so freaking good. It's always good. We've never had a bad experience there. And they do a buffet type service for the lunch. And so you just grab something to drink, and then you go up and you serve yourself at the buffet and then go sit down. And so as I got my food and I was walking back down, I walked right by her table, and she had her hands like this, eyes closed, and she was with someone, and they were blessing the hell out of that meal. Dear Jesus, we know that you are in control of all things. That kind of prayer. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was something, because I could still hear it from my table. Lord, we know that we live in dark days today. Lord, we know that these are perilous times. But we also know that even though we don't know who holds the future, we don't know what the future holds. How's that go? But even though we don't know what the future holds, we know who holds the future. It's like the song says, and we claim it, Lord. We claim it. Now, I'm already guessing that she goes to a church that's not too far from my house called Rhema Bible Training Center, which attracts these kinds of people, these kind of wispy people who show up, and they're all just name it and claim. They're all as poor as the day is long, claiming their prosperity all the time. And they're always very vocal. They're highly emotional people, because it's a highly emotional experience over there. There's a lot of crying and speaking in tongues and pew jumping. Do you remember the Toronto blessing? Anybody remember that? I'm sure you've seen the video where pastors start to freak out on stage and they're dancing, and they got congregation members on the ground who are barking like dogs, and people are laughing hysterically. This is called the Toronto blessing. I'm thinking of doing a speech about it here in 2020 that sort of explores this. But it's supposedly a move of the Spirit. She struck me as a Toronto blessing type. Lord, we ask that you bless these. In my mind, I hear it like this. We ask that you just bless every grain of this rice, Lord. We ask that you bless the meatballs and the gravy. Lord, we ask that you bless this entire meal. Bless it to the nourishment of our bodies and our bodies to your service. Amen. It was an extremely theatrical moment over there. And of course, I couldn't help but smile. And Natalie, who knows me, is just looking at me like she knows what's going on in my brain. She's like, give him a break. Now, give him a break. I'm not going to go over there and say anything. It's their meal, but I can have commentary about it. I can have an opinion about it. So anyway, that was my lunch today. And because I'm easily amused, having the time of my life. Tentacles and Jesus. That was a lot of fun. So I gave a speech in Canada a couple of years ago that people have just loved and latched onto. It's called Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. And people love this speech. It talks about all this kind of stuff. Lord, we ask that you bless the mashed potatoes. We ask that you magically enchant the meal. Oh, Lord, we ask that you guide the hands of the neurosurgeon who has been training for decades and is an expert in his field. But Lord, he needs you to come in and guide his hands. Lord, we ask that you be with us and protect us and guide us as we lock our doors and carry our mace and load our pistols. We ask, Lord, that you keep us safe. That kind of stuff. Christianity made me talk like an idiot. This was true for me. And so in the audience that day was none other than Richard Dawkins. Now, I met Dawkins back in 2012 for the first time. I've interviewed him twice. And he's been a great guy to me. He's been nothing but gracious and kind. But he's not exactly the kind of dude that you just hang with. It's not like I bump into Matt Dillahunty or Christina Rad or whoever. Hey, what's going on? Good to see you. Hey, Rich, what's up? Samnon, man, good to see you. High five, big hug. Tell me about your life. You don't do that with Richard Dawkins. He's just so freaking British. And so he is, but he's very polite. Always kind of off in his own skull. Like he's not necessarily on a higher plane or a lower plane, but he's on a different plane. He's operating in a different way than I am. And so where I'm this sort of easygoing, everybody's a buddy kind of a guy, it just doesn't work with somebody like Richard Dawkins. So we've always been polite and we know each other and we respect each other's work, but we don't exactly hey, good to see you. What's going on? We don't do that. I remember I was at that Toronto, I think it was Toronto or was it Vancouver? It was a Canada event. Imagine no religion. I was in the elevator. We were going down and we just both, hello. And we just stood there in the elevator. I was reminded of that Stephen Wright routine where he talked about how his parents used to make him just stand in the corner and look up at the top of the wall. And he called it elevator practice. That's exactly what I felt like. And, but anyway, I'm releasing a second edition of my autobiography. Some stuff about the book, which I'm really proud of, bugs me. I'm replacing the foreword. One of the main reasons is that Teresa McBain, who wrote the original foreword for my book, ended up in all kinds of situations that they were just kind of iffy, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, announced that she was going back to the church. So, and I love Teresa. But it was unfortunate because all of a sudden, she was like, "Well, I'm going to go back into the church," and I can understand why. She never found her footing outside the church, so she went back to where she knew and where it was comfortable. I don't. I mean, I'm trying not to project, but I think it was an emotional decision, maybe even a financial one. It might be that she all of a sudden realized she was wrong on the God question, but I kind of doubt it. And then, she just sort of disappeared from all of our lives. And while I would love a chance to have her on the show or just talk to her over coffee personally off the air, it just having her at the front of the book is problematic for me for obvious reasons. And so I needed actually, I really wanted a new foreword for the book, and I thought, I wonder if Dawkins would do it. And he's a big fish. Everybody and their dog is pawing at Richard Dawkins because, can you sign my book? Can you read my book? Can you promote my book? Would you write a foreword for my book? This is the kind of shit he probably gets 15 of every freaking day. And so I held out really almost no hope. But I wanted to go back and take another look at Deconverted because while my story hasn't changed, I looked at, I mean, some of the arguments, some of the language I used to frame it is like 7, 8 years old. And I have evolved in my thinking since then. There are better ways to phrase some of it. I rewrote most of the last 3 chapters. There's a whole section on counter apologetics. I'm much different than I was back in 2011 when I wrote it, 2012. Um, Dealing with those arguments, and we get into the basics, the evolution of the I, and the claims that Hitler was an evolutionist, and how do you have morals without God? Where do you find meaning and purpose in life without God? Most of the most miserable places and people on earth are atheists. What do you think happens when you die? You know, I get into the basics because part of the book is sort of a primer for the doubter and the seeker, somebody who was or is where I was coming out of the faith. I wanted it to be accessible so that they're dipping their toes in the water. They get the stuff that you and I have heard 1,000 times, they may be reading for the first time. But I knew I could make those arguments better. I knew I could explain those positions better, not the least of which included some street epistemology, using questions, using the Socratic method to help challenge them to keep the burden of proof shifted upon the claimant and not allow them to move it over in my direction. I mean, they're the ones making a truth claim. So I rewrote chapters 19, 20, and 21 almost completely. I've got some other stuff that's window dressed, and it just sounds better. It feels better. And Richard Dawkins wrote a foreword for me. How did that happen? I'm just not sure, but he did. Richard Dawkins read my book and wrote a foreword for me. He also read the audible.com version. And these are all going to update on Amazon and Audible in the next week. They aren't updated just yet, but they'll be updated very shortly. And I'm really jazzed. If you already have Deconverted, don't buy it again. Don't buy it again. I'm not trying to sell the same book twice, okay? But if you haven't picked up Deconverted, this is a good time. In a week is a good time to do it. And you'll notice the cover's a little different. It's got my face on it, and it actually says second edition on it. I went back and reread the entire audiobook. I just reread the whole damn thing. And they're replacing the audio files on audible.com in the next week as well. Now, I know Richard's kind of a polarizing figure for some, but the absolute truth is that we're all flawed. We've all said and done stupid stuff. We all have things that we're not great at. And, Richard has said a few things. I'm just like, oh, yeah, God, what are you thinking? What are you doing? But when seen as a whole picture, the truth is that Richard Dawkins has accomplished more before breakfast for free thought and science education than most of his critics will in their entire lives. To see the sheer volume of contributions that he has made over the past half century, and to know what a tremendous difference he made in my own life. It is not hyperbole to say that the God delusion changed my life. I stumbled upon the God delusion, and holy shit. I was pouring through the book. It is probably the best encapsulation of a critique of religious belief, faith, doctrine, dogma that I have ever encountered, ever. And I've seen a lot of material out there. The God delusion, people invoke it for a reason. They invoke the God delusion for a reason because it's that good. And so I'm willing to look at the big picture and say, this guy's a game changer. He was a game changer in my life. He's been a game changer in the lives of a great many people. And again, he's done more for science education than most. And somebody ringing my doorbell. Oh, and there's Linus. All right, we're doing a live stream. I'll give you time to call the switchboard if you have a comment or question. Hold, please, and I'll be right back. Sorry about that, my friends. Yard guy came by. It's funny, though. Linus is 6 pounds, but he thinks he's Mustafa. And so as we walk out, he sees this flock of Canadian geese, and they're all just standing, on the neighbor's yard and in the street in front of the neighbor's yard. And Linus is like locked in. And I'm thinking, any one of those geese could kick your ass. He starts to bark. Linus? He hears his name. I said, Linus? No. He walks out 3 feet. Linus? No. Another 3 feet. And then he just takes off toward the Canadian geese. And the geese just look, they're not scared. They just look mildly irritated, like that they had to move. Like, oh God, here's another 6-pound rat dog kind of thing. They go up and fly into a neighboring field. And Mustafa turns around and looks at me like he's the man. What's that saying? It's not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. That's bullshit, by the way. But anyway, that's what just happened. So, okay. Let's put the chat up on the screen so everybody can see it. Let's go to the switchboard and see what our listeners have to say. Area code 312. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Chris.
Chris, what's going on? What's on your mind?
Hey, I wanted to discuss one of the things that I struggle with the most as an atheist, and that is whether speaking out against Christianity or religion in general is valuable, moral, worth it. I currently and personally believe that it's necessary because I think the damage Christianity is doing is detrimental to humanity, just like most all of us feel. So, and I went through all the stages of, you and I are generally roughly the same generation. I went through stages. I was in the Catholic Church when I was younger. I really never believed, and the Satanic Panic, I went through all that too. I mean, I remember all of this. I just didn't believe. Even as a young kid, I was real skeptical, so I just didn't believe. But when I became an atheist, it was like 10 years ago. So these stages pretty much started later in life. And I don't know what, I feel it in my nature. I have to speak out against, like there's one, the activist mommy, she speaks out against, the LGBT community. And I think, and the thing she says is disgusting, and it could incite harm against them. I feel like I'm doing something, or that is necessary to me to speak out. Some people will say that, well, mind your own business, leave their channel alone, leave their Facebook page alone. This is what I struggle with. They need to be pushed back. It has to be pushed back. We can't have a society of people that believes in killing people because of who they are. We can't have that. It just can't happen. So, and it's never going to happen. And so is this pushback, my current belief is that society needs those who are just quiet and good. I'm diplomatic with religion. I'll say Merry Christmas, blah, blah, blah. I have family that's right. I'm fine. I'll even go to a church. I'll be diplomatic about it. That's the point is, when I see something to speak out against, I don't want to feel guilty for speaking out against it.
Okay. Well, let me stop you right there.
What are your thoughts on it?
Why would you feel guilty? What would guilt come out of? What are you guilty over?
I did mention I was Catholic, right? Yeah.
Look, I don't spend a lot of time. I don't spend a lot of time going to religious pages to stir the pot. Most of those pages, the Facebook pages, We have been having some fun on Twitter with the transformed wife who has some tremendously awful ideas about roles for women, especially in relation to men and marriage and sexuality and all those types of things. And so we'll have some fun there. There's some utility
Yeah.
in that, but I don't spend a lot of time going into other people's houses, so to speak, to tell them that they're wrong. But I think you can disagree with them privately and publicly. Say that I simply disagree and I think what you're saying is harmful. You can do that. And I think if that speaks to your value system, you very much should do that. I don't think you walk into those environments with any delusion you're going to actually change minds unless there's somebody
Right. I would
watching
never
in the periphery.
proselytize. Yeah, I would never proselytize my opposing view. Like you said, to someone, door to door, someone's houses, in public, where people protest, or like Facebook is the same thing as a street corner. So,
Look,
I guess that's more what I'm referring to.
I think all I can really say is you have to establish what's my end goal. Am I trying to just let them know somebody disagrees with them? Because I think that's healthy for people. It's not that they like it, not that they're going to change their mind, but it's healthy for them to know that there is a disagreeing point of view. So you ask, is that my goal? Are you going on to?
Okay, I guess.
Now, hang on.
Good question. I should clarify. Go ahead.
Are you going on to someone else's page because you think you're going to convince them with the data? And you're going to be able to refute them, and they're going to change their minds, especially online, because that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
And I think that will drive you crazy because it so rarely happens. What's your goal?
All right. The end goal is simple. I know Wiccans. They don't bother me. I have good friends with it. I don't judge them and think they're nuts. They don't try to insert into
Chris,
the law.
Chris,
so the end goal.
What's your goal?
Yeah. I was just trying to explain that.
Okay.
But Christianity, there's a lot of, they're trying to insert into law their beliefs in the law, and I can't. That's the end goal. I just can't see that done, and so I have to be one of many people that have to speak out against that.
Okay.
That has to be a yeah.
So you
ahead.
just feel that it's important to counter the false advertising of religion, especially when it does so much damage. So speaking out is an exercise in that, right?
Yeah. I could personally say it did damage to me in a way. I mean, not as bad as I've seen people.
I don't see
but
anything wrong with that. I wouldn't spend any time or a lot of time going into the pages of religious people, churches, organizations, trying to stir the pot there. I think big picture is better. I think
only public. I would only do that. I don't believe anyone should ever just taunt anyone, or that's just not right.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to speak to your values, man. I mean, that's the tragedy would be that you weren't speaking to your values, that you weren't being vocal about the things that matter. So there's no guilt for that for you. I think, be who you are and at the volume you choose, man.
Yeah. I'm not afraid. I mean, I'm definitely not out. I've never had a problem telling anyone I'm an atheist. It's just that I don't know if people will say I'm being offensive to the Christians by speaking out against it. Well, this is a never-ending circle.
Well, what do you mean by speaking out? I'm an atheist is not offensive. If someone's like, well, you don't believe in God, and you say, no, I don't, they might borrow an offense.
Right.
They might say they take offense, but that's not offensive. But you looking at a religious person saying there is no God and you're an idiot for believing it, that is a whole nother ballgame. So what are you saying that they are coming after you about?
First of all, these Christians argue amongst themselves. They can't even agree on which. And so I point these things out to them, and then I get into these discussions, and like I say, currently I'm going to this. I don't know if you've heard of the activist mommy.
No, I haven't, but I can go look it up.
She's.
I get it.
You just gotta.
I get it. They've got bad ideas. They're promoting bad ideas, and you want to counter the bad ideas.
Right. And so I'm mostly on her site lately because she seems to be the most dangerous.
Well, I
And
mean,
if you even see her followers, and it's growing, it's unbelievable.
if you
So
are, if
go
you're
ahead.
drawing attention to something that's being said and you're saying that this is detrimental, there's very much a lot of merit to that. If you're in there trying to uh, change their mind, or you're expecting the people on their page to go follow you into the world of reason, no, I don't think so. So
Right.
I'm going to move
I
on, my
mean,
friend.
Matt Powell for a while.
No, I'm going to move
Oh,
on.
okay.
I appreciate you watching and
Good.
listening, though. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right,
Take
take it
care.
easy.
Bye.
We have to speak to our values, don't we? Otherwise, what are we? We just sit back and let the people who have damaging values or who feel like they own the conversation just steamroll over everybody else because they're not being quiet. They're not being timid. At the same time, I think we have to do a better job of understanding, well, which battles do I pick and how do I fight them and how our minds actually changed? And that speaks to learning how people develop opinions and how moral and moralistic positions are derived or created, understanding the psychology behind religious belief or all beliefs. And this doesn't fit on a Twitter byline, and bitching and fighting with people on somebody's Facebook page isn't going to change their mind, and probably it's only going to drive you crazy. So my advice would be to, take a breath, find out what your goals are, and then determine through science, reason, logic, and through conversations with other mind changers in the world, discover what the best road is to do that. Area code 575. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Lola. Thank you for taking my call.
Lola, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
I live close to El Paso. As you know, we had something devastating happen here
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
a few weeks ago.
All of that. Yeah.
And something I've noticed, and I don't know if it's good. Well, it is good, but it's very odd. I don't know if you've noticed all of these people who have been caught with these mass shooting plans lately. None of this happened before El Paso, or very few. And now there seems to be some kind of, like every day it's 2 or 3 that, law enforcement are finding these guys are going to go shoot up somewhere. And I just think it's odd.
What's
It's good.
Do you feel like that?
Good, but
I'm sorry. It's odd that there are that many people planning an attack who were caught, or it's odd that they're being discovered. It's odd in what way?
I just think that it's odd that they're being discovered. I mean, and I hate to sound like a conspiracy nut, and I probably 100% do, but I think that's the skeptic's job, is to look at this and say, okay, well, this happened for X amount of time, and now look, oh, this is happening. And like I said, I don't think it's bad. I just think it just strikes me as odd.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what drives those beyond hate. What drives the shooters? I don't know why more would be discovered in one time period than another. I don't know if they saw the El Paso event and were inspired. If they have been planning it for years and law enforcement simply turned up the heat on some of these operations, I can't speak to any of that, but it's certainly something we ought to be watching, and I'd be curious to see what the commenters online have to say about it as well. So, we'll keep our eyes and ears wide open as good skeptics will, okay?
Okay, thanks.
I appreciate
Have a good day, everybody.
All right, thank you. Area code 703. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Evan.
Evan, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
Thanks for taking my call. I actually met you at the Colorado Secular Conference at the Yak and Yeti. I talked to you about a podcast that you had done about the Tower of Babel.
Oh
briefly.
yeah. It's called The Tower That Reaches the Heavens. It was interesting too. We had this amazing dinner the night before the Colorado Secular Conference at a place called the Yak and Yeti, which was Indian food, and it was delicious, and we had a great time. And I just like saying Yak and Yeti. I just think that's fun, but that's just me. But it was a pleasure meeting you, my friend. What's on your mind today?
I also mentioned to you that I had something akin to my own kind of God of Cancer story when I was there. And so I wanted to relate that story to you as briefly as possible. My mother died back in November, and I was there when it happened. And a good majority of my immediate family is extremely religious. And ultimately, I think it was a mitral valve failure that caused the essential problem. But after doing some thinking about it, there was a lot of grief surrounding it, and there was a lot of praying that happened to it. And in fact, a prayer group arrived literally a minute before she coded. And they did this really elaborate prayer. And while they were working on her, because they were getting ready to she was having difficulty with her kidneys, I think, not processing the toxins in her system. So they were going to put her on dialysis to clean it out because they couldn't operate on the mitral valve without getting her stable. And so the nurses were like rushing in and working on this while that was going on. And so the prayer thing was happening, and they had just put her on the thing. And there was this like 1 minute prayer that somebody did. And she literally coded a minute after the prayer circle. And it was the most bizarre thing. But I was in a position where I could see that the reason she actually coded was because the dialysis machine was getting clogged with her blood, and it was just not working, and that's what caused her to code.
Now, by code, you mean that her heart stopped?
Yes.
And the monitor,
yes. And of course, her heart started, the monitor starts beeping, and the doctors come in and try to get her heart going again. That's what I meant by code. And I mean, her heart stopped literally like 30 seconds to a minute after the end of the prayer thing. And of course, there were, even before this, every time she rallied, it was God be praised. And here we have this prayer circle. And then immediately after, and it was, oh, God called her to him. And, and then I think back, because this wasn't the first heart issue she had had. She had actually had her aortic valve she had scarlet fever when she was younger. And so her aortic valve had problems about 6.5, 7 years ago. And so she had to have major open heart surgery, and they replaced her calcified aortic valve with, pig stuff. And it essentially gave her an additional 6.5 years. But thinking back, I remember the doctor said, oh, she's eventually going to have problems with her mitral valve because it got damaged in the process of recompensing for her problems with her aortic valve. But even then, it was, nobody ever gave the doctor or science or anybody along those lines credit for saving her life 6.5 years earlier. It was all God this and God that. And so God got all of the credit for saving her life 6.5 years previous. And then, of course, when she died, God got credit for calling her away, and they saw her spirit leave and all of this other stuff. And so here I, the atheist, am looking at all of this, at least backwards, because there's the whole grief process that happens. But it was just bizarre hearing all of this God talk, that nobody seemed to recognize how science and the doctors had saved her 6.5 years earlier. But and every time she rallied, it was God this and God that, and nobody else got credit for whatever was happening at the time. But then as soon as as she died, it was, God called her away. And so I just
They
had
didn't.
this bizarre.
They
Go
didn't
ahead.
blame God for stopping her heart 1 minute after the prayer. I mean,
No, my
because
to his credit, my
somebody needs to call an attorney and sue God, right? God is
it
responsible.
it seemed to me that after all of the God be praised this and that, that blaming God would have been it. Now, to my stepfather's credit, he did admit that he was angry with God after her death. So to his credit, he was angry, but he didn't blame God for taking her. And in fact, when we had the memorial service, I was expecting the, she's in a better place argument. But what I didn't expect was the preacher to say, she's the lucky one because she's with God. And I was just appalled that they would say, she's the lucky one. And with that, because I don't identify with that on any particular level.
God is silly
So,
putty, right?
Anyway,
you can mold God into any. I mean, it's just like that's
right.
the God of cancer speech, which you referred to. If she gets well, then praise God for the healing. If she stays the same, then she didn't die. Praise God. If she does die, God called her home. She's in a better place with no pain, and we'll all be reunited. It's, an ever-moving goalpost. There's no way for God to lose in that equation. It is interesting to watch people sort of bend God into whatever shape God needs to be in the moment. So thanks for sharing the story, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. 606, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Savannah. I'm from Eastern Kentucky.
Hi, Savannah. What's on your mind today?
About a month ago, I found out that I was pregnant. And I'll start off by saying that I used to be a very avid Christian. I mean, I went to church every Wednesday, every Friday, every Sunday. I actually was involved in starting a group at my high school where we could leave school for about an hour and go to the local church up the road and do Christian activities with the preacher for a whole hour or whatever. And since then, of course, I'm an atheist. I've been listening to your podcast for about 3 years, and I'm very concerned with raising a child in Eastern Kentucky because we have this thing now where I'm sure you've heard Trump wants to put all this "In God We Trust" back in schools, and it's everywhere now. No school has an issue doing it, and especially at my husband's high school, I mean, they put it pretty big on the walkway, and I'm actually considering homeschooling my child when we have our child because of this. And my family is all Christians. I mean, I'm very lost on how to raise my child in a very Christian environment.
You guys got Governor Matt Bevin too, so it's like church every time you guys, see the state government come together, right? Did you see that jacket that he was wearing, the blue jacket with Trump all over it? He was actually wearing the president.
Yes.
And of course in Kentucky,
he's a disgrace, if we're being honest.
And of course in Kentucky, you've got the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter.
Yes.
It's just a never-ending kick in the teeth. I'm a big fan of secular homeschools in the right circumstances. But you're saying what? The public schools are so religious that you're thinking of homeschooling your child?
Yes, actually, a couple of counties over from us, me and my husband we're very avid atheists. We actually go out of our way to post our opinions on these things on social media just to show that, the majority may be Christian, but there are people who care about these things, that they don't want their children forced into these things. There's a school a couple of counties over that has what they called a prayer locker. And although it's not illegal, it's still one of those things that I really don't like to see in schools because I was in high school and I know the type of people that do those things, and I know that it's meant to single out the people who don't believe or who are different from those Christians, because they will put things like, oh, well, I want to pray for so-and-so because they're an atheist. And it's not, these Christians don't mean well. They want to, single people out and make them feel bad for their religious views.
Do me a favor, send me an email, seth@thethinkingatheist.com. I don't know what part of Kentucky you're in. Remind me.
I'm actually in Stowyersville, Kentucky.
Okay. I don't know where that is, but I'm going to have you email me, and I know a couple of free thought groups in Kentucky that might have some resources for you. So while you are essentially living in a big church, there are some...
Basically, I mean, honestly, here, there's a church on every corner here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can drive 5 minutes down the road and there's a church.
I know. When I drive by the Ark Encounter billboards, I just grieve for the entire state of Kentucky. Beautiful country. And they've got some great horse racing.
Unfortunately, we're washed in Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I can hook you up with a free thought group in the area, maybe they've got some resources for you and your child that I do not. But I'm all about trying to connect people who might be able to benefit from each other. Okay. So Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. Just say it's Savannah. I will know who it is, and I will see if I can connect you guys. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Seth.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
You betcha. Have your people. Call my people. You bet. It's great to be able to talk to you. 856. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Matt.
Matt, what's on your mind today, my friend?
I've actually recently come out to my family and my friends as an atheist. Been an atheist for quite a while, and I was wondering if I could maybe pick your brain and get some advice on the being shunned.
Oh, my God. You're talking to a guy who's got a rather tenuous relationship with his own family, so I don't know if I have any great wisdom, but I'm certainly a listening ear, and maybe we can walk through some of it. You say shunned outright, like they've cast you off?
Except for my mom. My mom's the only one still sticking around.
So you, had a sit-down with him? What'd you do, send an email?
No, I just as I was in social situations with them, I decided it was time to stop faking it, because I tried to fake it till you make it for 4 years once I realized I was actually an atheist. And, that didn't work out well for me. And the reason that I'm calling in is it's become so peculiar is the only one that will talk to me is my grandmother. And, well, I mean, she won't even sit next to me anymore.
How old are you?
Birthdays, holidays. I'm 32.
I'm sorry. Can I ask how old you are?
I am 32.
Okay. So, I mean, you've already got your legs under you, right? It's not like you're living at home and you're worried about being financially penalized in some way. This is more about
Correct.
Having a connection, a relational connection with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine a scenario where if your mother or father, siblings came to you and they said, I believe in God, that you would ever say to them, I want nothing to do with you, and that you would shun them?
I could not possibly do that. They're my family.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable to me. They're family. I might not agree, but I still love them.
But they're doing it to you.
Yes.
From your perspective, why do you think they do that?
The biggest reason I can come up with is they feel I have betrayed the family because my grandfather, who has recently passed, was a pastor.
So it was charged to you to carry the mantle.
Aside from my older brother, I'm the oldest living grandson in the family that has not chosen to walk away from the family.
They then expect you to live their life. Would that be accurate?
I can imagine so, but they don't talk to me much, so I don't know exactly what they expect from me.
Well, I mean, you know,
So,
they expect you to be a Christian. They expect you to follow in the family line and carry on the family faith, right?
yes.
And they would never abide that kind of expectation in their own lives. Let's say that your family was mostly atheist and they were Christians. And you said, you know, grandfather was an atheist activist, and he's expected you, the grandchild, to continue his atheist activism, or else we'll shun you. Do you think they would reject their faith if they were charged to do that?
No.
Right? That's a double standard
I
in
don't.
place, right? That's a double
Yeah.
standard, meaning they would never allow someone else to tell them not to believe, but they are telling you to believe, or else.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, we have to ask ourselves, are they more in love with you as their child, son, grandson, whatever, or are they more in love with their religious faith? And I'm not trying to turn the screw here. This is just a set of important questions I think we need to address. Do they love you more than they love their faith, or vice versa?
I personally say they're more afraid of me messing with, because uncles, aunts, they have children, my cousins and such. They're more afraid of me taking them away by giving them a different mindset.
So the idea that there's somebody in the ranks who doesn't toe the family line and might influence the nephews and nieces and grandkids and anybody who's at the family reunion on Thanksgiving, that terrifies them.
Yeah.
It should. I mean, it shouldn't terrify them, but we have to examine what kind of insecurity creates this environment. I mean, they believe that they have locked on to the absolute truth, the irrefutable truth, with a capital T, and that Satan is already defeated, and that there is no question that this belief system is accurate. It is the Rock of Gibraltar, right? And yet, out of one side of the mouth, they're saying this. Out of the other side of the mouth, they're terrified of an opposing point of view or a point of disagreement, which reveals that they may not be as convinced about their own faith as they say they are. I mean, does your gut tell you that they might be afraid that you might say something that makes sense?
Yeah, especially because when I did my stint as a Buddhist, well, because I was an atheist, but that was at least a religion and they could accept that, they didn't want me talking about it at all.
But if you had said to them, I don't want you talking about Jesus around me, what would they have responded with?
Shut up, I'm your senior, do as I tell you. It's my right.
Yeah, right? I mean, you see the double standard. This is called Christian privilege. They have allowed themselves all this latitude, but they're telling you that you don't get the same latitude in your own life. You don't get to be you. You don't get to speak to your values. You don't get to talk about the things that are important to you or ask the questions that are relevant to you. Those you do not get to do. But if you were to make that same demand of them, they would be aghast. They'd be offended. They would be horrified. Why would you ever ask me not to be true to myself? And so at the end of the day, my friend, I know there are consequences to everything that you're involved with, but it would be a tragedy if you were not true to yourself while everybody else in your family was true to themselves. If you were the one who actually had to fold because you didn't get to be because someone else was uncomfortable. You aren't on this earth to make other people comfortable, my friend. You're here on this earth for reasons that you decide, pursuing goals that you choose, designing your own sense of purpose, and pursuing the facts, the data, the evidence, the truth on your terms. And so the idea is not to make sure mom and dad and everybody else are happy and comfortable and that they will invite me to the next reunion, but that you are living an authentic life. And that would be my hope for you. I don't know if that helps at all, but that's kind of my perspective.
It helps a lot because that's what I've been struggling with, how to be me and keep the people I love around. And it's kind of feeling if they're not going to let me stay around, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to run and be like, yeah, screw you guys. No, I'm not doing that.
That's a line that they're drawing. You're absolutely right. Right?
Yeah.
You're saying I'm available. I'm right here. And if you lock me out, you're the ones who actually set that lock in place. I would encourage you as well to try something. And if it works, if it doesn't work, let me know. Send me an email. But have if next time you're sitting down, have the same conversation with them that I just had with you. You know, Mom, Dad, look, if I was to ask you the same thing that you ask me, to never talk about your values or to talk about your faith or to talk about the things that were important to you, how would that make you feel? What would your response be to me? Would you ever shut up about the things that you thought mattered in this world? And watch them. They'll be like, no, we have to talk about it. But that might be the first time that they're able to see it through the looking glass the other way and realize that they are asking you to do something they would never accept in their own lives. And you're able to do so with empathy and compassion as a son. You're not attacking them. You're saying, look, can you see how all of this looks and sounds? And it might create a little bit of a fissure, a little bit of a crack, where you then can begin to weave in more of yourself into those conversations, and they might become more accepting, not agreeing, but accepting you for who you are. I would try that. Mom, Dad, would you do this stuff in your own life that you're asking me to do in mine? Or would you say, no, my life is mine to live? Give that a shot. See what happens, okay?
Thank you very much. I will definitely take that to heart and give that a shot.
All right, well,
I
for
really
what
think
it's
that would
worth.
help a lot.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you very much. I don't know if it's anybody in the chat who's got a better opinion than I do, but, you know, Mom and Dad, would you ever not be true to yourself if somebody said, I'm going to lock you out and we're not going to ever speak again unless you do this? They just flip out. I don't know. In the chat room, you can decide if that was good advice or not, and you can respond anyway in case he is still watching, and I do appreciate that call. 707, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Forrest, if it's the right 707.
707. I'm sorry, tell me your name again.
Forrest, can you hear me?
I can. Forrest, thanks so much for calling. What's on your mind?
Well, I was hoping I could ask you a question for advice, if you have any.
Well, what's the question? We'll see.
Well, recently, due to like some bad financial luck in my favor, I have to move back in, with my mother, who is religious. I'm not. And recently found out that the homeschooling program she's switching to for my younger brother, who is 11, is a Christian one. Wondering, do you have any advice, or have you ever come across where you have to, or a good way to calmly try to argue against that without upsetting the person who's trying to teach it?
All right, let me make sure I understand. You're moving into a situation where someone is going to a religious school?
No, the homeschooling curriculum that is being taught to my brother is a religious homeschool curriculum.
How old is he?
He's 11.
Okay. Well, my friend, you're not going to be able to change the situation for your brother beyond allowing your brother to see a secular life lived in front of him. I have a feeling if you are trying to sway your mom, I think you should let your opinion be known, but it sounds to me like she's a true blue, Jesus-loving, Bible-waving Christian homeschool mom, right?
Oh, yes. It's not no swaying my mother. It's more of a discussing it with my brother, because I've talked with him before. Bright kid.
Yeah.
They're like he gets things, and there have been things where he's like, oh, well, that makes sense that he heard from either our mom or my sister, and I explained it was wrong and told him why and how he did. So he trusts me on stuff like that. But I don't want to, if I'm in the home, I don't want to be seen as a disturbance to, my mom, who's been kind enough to let me move back in temporarily.
Oh.
I don't want to cause stress.
I see. So you're doing a cost benefit. If I come home and I'm wanting to be honest with my brother about the fact that there may be some holes in the stuff that mom is teaching him, I might be putting myself in jeopardy and I might not have a place to sleep tomorrow. Is that what am I
Well,
tracking?
that, and, I don't want to put my relationship in jeopardy with my younger brother.
Yeah.
Because, one of us has to live with her.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I have a solution, except I think it's healthy for your 11-year-old brother to see what it looks like to be a religious skeptic, right? So he can be learning all the homeschool lessons over here, but you've got your space, you are you, and he can see you being you, which means he sees the atheist, the skeptic, the person who doesn't buy it, who doesn't go to church, who doesn't pray, who doesn't hold to any supernatural beliefs in their life. And he's learning from that. Even if you're not having verbal conversations, he's still sort of assessing who you are, what your life is like. Are you happy? Do you have balance? Are you moral? Are you good? Do you have purpose? Do you fit into the cookie cutter of the atheist that he may have learned in religious circles? He's doing kind of an assessment all the time. And I think that's healthy for him. You're not going to be able to retrain your brother while you're there, but I do think that you can be you in full view of your brother, in the hopes that at some point he comes to you with questions. Hey, look, I noticed that you don't believe this. Can we talk about it? Hey, I'm skeptical about that. What do you think? And if he comes to you, that's all the better, because now you're not accosting him. He doesn't go on the defensive, but he's actually at a point where he's sort of doxastically open and ready to have those conversations. So, just be yourself, man. Don't mute who you are. Just be yourself within reason. Try not to start any unnecessary fights, and let your brother see you be who you are, okay?
All right. Do you mind if I bring up one more quick thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of the book called Dinosaurs and the Bible?
It doesn't ring a bell, but it's possible it's come across my path. What is it?
It's not a very long book. It's a book trying to explain the literal biblical worldview. Specifically, just trying to reconcile just dinosaurs with that view. A friend of mine got it for me as a gag gift because I know I'm super into dinosaurs, and that's like what I'm trying to go to school for, is paleontology. But like while reading, it's one of those things that's specifically written to appeal to like a 9 to 12-year-old audience. And I was thinking, if you ever came across stuff like that, that might be an interesting podcast subject one day.
It'd be a maddening podcast. It's like going through the
It would be a maddening podcast, yeah.
Homeschool stuff, the ACE program and a lot of those homeschool curriculums are just terrifying. The science books have no
these
science
are like
in
books
them.
made to, like those. And like stuff in it, I noticed when I read through lies, like feather impressions, which are obviously feathers. Like, no, that's just rotting skin that got fossilized. They try to use different translations of the Bible to prove the same point, but will still say like the version they choose is the correct one, the other ones are wrong. It's a maddening read, but
yeah, we may
like
have to do. We can do a show on that stuff. We can, if I can get my hands on some of that stuff, maybe we'll do an expose of what it is and what it says. But I think most of us are aware that it's just that way madness lies. So you hang in there out there, okay?
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll do a few more just for the hell of it. Area code 812. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Sarah.
Sarah, thanks for calling. What's going on?
Oh, I've been listening to your show for several years, and I really love what you do.
Thank you.
Really, really do. And I'm floored by the stories that I hear. I've been an atheist since I was 12. I can remember like it was yesterday where I was, what I was doing. I had went out to feed our cows. I lived on a farm, a small farm. And I was just walking back, and this voice in my head said, there's probably not a God. And I just stopped. And that began my search for answers. Of course, this was 44 years ago, so didn't have the internet. I started with reading the Bible, and I did not like what I read. Didn't like it at all. In fact, it kind of pissed me off. which led to me really having a lot of feminist views. I wanted to ride better. I wanted to throw rocks further. I wanted to run faster than all the boys because I didn't like the patriarchy. So it's just been so upsetting to me to hear so many stories of people that are raised in Christianity and the trauma that they go through when they try and leave. And I'm so thankful that I've never had to deal with that. So I really, really appreciate what you do. I mean, seriously, dude.
Oh, well,
It's just amazing to me.
I think we only have each other. So it's nice to be able to have, even online, a community of
Yeah.
people who can support each other. And it's not just me. It's amazing to see the people in the chat when we have a caller who's talking about being shunned or ostracized. They just rally around. There's like this sort of virtual group hug that takes place. And people are like, if you need somebody, let me know. If you got to talk, let me know. It's really amazing to see people reaching out. But thank you for noticing, and thanks for the kind words. I envy you having figured it out so early. But, it does mean a lot.
It was just really weird. Yeah, it was just really weird. I mean, I don't know where that voice came from, but it was just like somebody would drop it into a conversation.
Yeah.
There's probably not a God.
Well,
and it floored me, and it still floors me to think about it. So, being in Indiana, everybody assumes you go to church and you believe. So you kind of got to keep it. And it's Trump country too, so it's just crazy. So
Well,
you've really got to walk a tightrope. You're walking on eggshells, and you've really got to watch what you say, or you're ostracized. I mean, even me. I do know a few people who accept my views, and we can talk about it, and they're cool. But most people, wow, they would not want anything to do with me. It's just amazing.
Well, your call is a reminder
So
of the
it
importance.
really,
I'm sorry, forgive me. Go ahead.
I just think it's so important that people accept other people's views. And with religion, I don't see it. They say they're accepting, but they're not.
Yeah.
And that really upsets me that they don't have a problem putting people through all this trauma when they wouldn't want to go through it themselves.
Well, you are a reminder of the importance of community and how much we really do need each other. So thank you so very much for the call.
You're welcome, Seth.
All
Hey,
right.
You guys have a great afternoon.
Take care. And bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
I think people get respect. Ideas have to earn it. That's why I think that Islamophobe is a bullshit term. Because we've been having this conversation recently on Twitter. People say, well, if you're an Islamophobe, you're a racist. And I'm always like, Islam is not a race. It's an idea. And ideas don't get respect. Ideas have to earn it. So you can go up to a flat earther and you can be respectful to the human being. But you don't have to respect the flat earth belief. You can go up to a Scientologist and you can have respect for the human being. But you don't have to have respect for Scientology, etc., etc. People get respect. Or people have to earn respect. Ideas have to earn respect out there in the ether. And so we don't start off by saying, well, everyone should have equal amount of respect for their beliefs. No, I mean, the people get respect. The beliefs, well, I'll get back to you on that one. Area code 480. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is your friend Alex from Phoenix, Arizona.
Alex. I'll be in Phoenix November
Yes.
9th with Matt Dillahunty. It's going to be a great day out there. What's going on in your world?
Well, I'm one of the people who is helping to organize that event. But essentially, I have a question for you about, essentially, I own a business, and I'm thankful in that I work by myself. And have a little bit of a privilege in the way that I can, as I say, in that I can actually fire my clients. But I'm curious to know your thoughts about people who do work in trades, who do visit other people's homes. Like I go into all sorts of people's homes, whether they be theists of all stripes or whatever. And generally speaking, I keep my mouth shut. I don't try to challenge them on it, but on the other hand, I'm kind of unapologetically atheist. I wear my atheism on my sleeves, quite literally. But and I'm curious to know your thoughts about other people who go into trades and your advice for them about what they could do whenever they enter a space where they may feel like, I don't know, feel that they just aren't going to be welcomed there.
Well, if you're bringing someone into your space and they're religious, then I think you have every right to challenge and say, no, we're not going to have a religious practice here, or I disagree. But if you're a professional going into someone else's home as part of your job, I'm not sure why religion or atheism would be a part of those conversations. I think you're serving the client and you're serving the business, the interests of the company, and your own career and livelihood. So that's a much different conversation than, hey, somebody who's a Christian invited me over as a friend. If you're doing business, if you're a professional out there, then be professional, do the job, do it well, do it with excellence, and then if the conversations about God come up organically elsewhere, that's a whole other deal. Okay.
Yeah, that's what my question was. Is essentially, how it tends to be that, where do you go to church? That famous question. If that should come up, say for instance, I'm eventually going to start hiring individuals. If that conversation does in fact come up, what advice would you give to people about either not engaging with that situation or engaging in a non-confrontational type
I'm just not
way?
sure I understand. I don't think you can have a religious question in terms of hiring and firing. I think that's illegal. If someone asks...
That's not what I'm asking.
If someone asks you...
If that...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, if they're actually in someone else's home. If there's someone in someone else's home and that question comes up, how would you advise that employee to either not engage or whatever?
Well, that's a question of boundaries. If I'm in somebody's home and they say, where do you go to church? Then I can respond honestly, I don't, and I can respond any way I choose depending on how I assess things. If I think there's going to be a conflict and I don't want to hurt the company, I say, well, I don't have a church home. If I feel like I want to be absolutely forthright, I say, I don't go to church or I'm not religious. And if I want to be really bold, I just say, well, I'm an atheist. I think if you're directly asked that question, the person who has asked you is essentially open Pandora's box. They're the ones who are, they'll deserve whatever answer that they get. If you're getting to someone's personal life in a professional setting and you say, what God do you believe in? They sort of set that wheel in motion. So it's not really on you if you answer the question honestly. Sadly, sometimes this has repercussions. Sometimes it has repercussions for the company, for the owner, and it could make things sticky for the employee. So this is all cost benefit. I think you have to know your employer. You have to know where the hot buttons are. You have to know what the stakes are. And you have to be strategic, playing chess, not checkers. And if you think there's a chance the client's going to call the boss and you might lose your job or something else is going to happen. I mean, like I say, according to the letter of the law, you can't lose your job for being an atheist. But discrimination so often works between the letters of the law. You weren't fired because you were an atheist and cost us a client. You're fired because you have, quote unquote, poor communication skills. That's how discrimination works. But, if somebody asks you, why not? Hell, everybody else is saying what they do and why they do it. If someone says, say, where do you go to church? And you don't go to church, the right answer is, I don't go to church. And I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And you can decide exactly how to phrase it, but that's the answer. If it's the truth, be truthful. Okay?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate you very much. I mean, you're over doing work for your client, and if you're doing work for your company, your boss, your supervisor, and you're making a living, you're clocking in, you're working hard, you do your job with excellence, and someone says, hey, where do you go to church? And I say, I don't go to church. And that person says, I'm canceling my contract. Whose fault is that really? It's the customer's fault because they're being bigoted against you. They're not interested at that moment in, hey, is he doing an excellent job for me? Is he representing his company well? For them, the religious question trumps all, and that's on the customer. It's not on you. Area code 657. Thanks for waiting. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Tell me your name. Who's this?
Hi, this is David from California.
David, what's on your mind?
Firstly, I'm like really nervous to call. I feel like I've been questioning my faith. I'm actually like 18 years old.
Okay.
So
Well, you're doing
I'm
great,
on the
my
younger
friend.
side.
Doing great. So you're coming out of, you're in what faith? What faith are you questioning?
Christian evangelical.
Okay.
And I started watching actually the Atheist Experience. So that's what actually began like my questioning process. But I'm finding the transition from thinking rationally from irrationally to be so difficult. Initially, when I started, it was actually really damaging at night. I would like have nightmares because I thought that I wasn't following the word. I was doubting, and I thought that this was like a demonic presence trying to influence me. And eventually, also I am gay. And I always learned within the church. Now, I think that at least in California, in SoCal, they're a little bit less homophobic. I think it's also due to the area. But what they used to tell me was, you can feel this way, but you can't act on it. You know? So that was also very challenging for me because I felt like I needed to like extend a part of myself for God, because that's what you do as a Christian. You know, I think for atheists, for example, they don't understand the psychological toll that it takes on you. So therefore they go and, oh, you're like dumb, you're stupid, no, is that we're indoctrinated. And I even say that conscientiously, and I still can't escape the framework, you know, of I'm watching something and I view it as demonic. I couldn't even get braids in my hair because I thought that it was a dedication to a demon named Shakti. And I just got so fed up with being so controlled. And I'm having such a difficult time with the transition because I feel like atheists also I think you have the empathy for it because you used to be Christian for many years. So when you're surrounded by these people who love you unconditionally or claim to, say your family, they bring you in, yet when you're suffering, you'll learn that it's not God's fault, it's your fault. Your faith is weak. And it became this circular argument to me. Like I can be hurting inside because of this faith, yet it's not the faith's fault, it's my fault. And I think my question is just, firstly, I wanted to let atheists know to be a little bit kinder to believers. You have no idea the torture that goes through their heads. Like it's like submitting to logic is the devil. It is evil. It is the Antichrist. It kills God. If God was really all powerful, he wouldn't be able to die just by using your brain. But that's the case. You know, so my advice is that I just wish that people could be kinder, make fun of them less, gather like a little bit more empathy. But my second question is, how did you like escape the indoctrination process? And what was the difficult parts for you, and how did that look?
Well, let me start by saying that you're doing great. Like you say you're nervous, but you are telling your story in a compelling way, and I think you've got everybody on the radio just sort of hanging on your every word. Like we are taking you personally. You're doing fantastic. Okay, so don't beat yourself up.
Thank you.
You're doing really good. I'm guessing, and don't let me project too much here. Tell me if I have this right. But I'm guessing I'm guessing this is a mind-heart battle. In your mind, you know that much of this doesn't really wash, and that it's not adding up, and the square peg is not going into the round hole. But in your heart, in that place where they fed you all of this information from your earliest memories, you are afraid. You're afraid, what if I'm wrong? I don't want to go to hell. What if it really is a demonic attack? What if my family shuns me? What are the implications of me walking away from the religion of my family? Is it a mind-heart tug of war right now?
Absolutely. I would absolutely describe it as that.
You know, when I first came out of the faith, I couldn't sleep at night. I was sort of in my journey. I hadn't yet said the word atheist, but I was up in the middle of the night, just my gut was in a knot and I was staring at the ceiling and my heart was racing. It sounds so dramatic when I say this, but it was absolutely true. It was like a panic attack where you think, what if I continue down the rabbit hole and it ruins my life? What if I continue down the rabbit hole and I was wrong and I burn forever? I mean, there's no taking that back. And it took a while for my heart to catch up with my brain. I, in my mind, realized in 2008 that I was an atheist. Now, I'm not saying you have to come to that conclusion. Your journey belongs to you. I'm just telling you about me, okay? I came to the point at the end where I examined the Bible. I went into religious history. I looked at all of the other major religions. I asked the questions. I had these meetings with apologists. I prayed. I asked for God to reveal himself. I did all the stuff that I knew to do. And at the end of the day, I realized I just don't buy it. And I was honest with myself and my rational brain and said, I am an atheist. But for another 2 years in my heart, I was still scared. I was scared that I was going to lose everything. I was scared that I was going to go to hell. I was scared about all that stuff. My heart took a while to catch up with my brain. And I think understanding that helps a little bit. You know, emotions leading us around, that'll make you flat crazy, right? I mean, you feel what some of that in your own life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I also think that you have to give yourself permission to doubt. Think about God in the context of benevolence. Think of a parent and a child. Would a truly loving parent see a child who was trying to live honestly and truthfully, and trying to figure out what was real and what was not? And would that parent then punish the child for trying to live an authentic life? And I used that term earlier in the show. The truth is that the fact is that a genuinely benevolent God would reward the child for trying to figure it out, for trying to live honestly. And so the idea that a just, loving, benevolent God is going to hurt you because you have questions and you want to be yourself and you want to find out what the answer is on your terms. We can already decide that God would not be benevolent if that God threatened to burn you for eternity. That God would not be any God that we would want anything to do with. That is not love. That is a threat. It's tyranny. It's a tyranny of the mind and of the heart. And what helped me in my own life is what has helped me in my own life is to learn how people have used the devil and hell to control other people, to keep them in the dark, to keep them from asking questions, to keep them from ever really going too far outside the wall. And once you realize how much of a mechanism for control hell and the devil have been, then you realize it's a human-made thing. And it becomes easier to get past it and to overcome it. And then as your mind is embracing rationality and as you're following the chains of evidence, your heart will eventually start to calm down and it will follow you on that journey. But the mind is the locomotive on the train, right? Your emotions don't lead you on the journey. Your rational mind leads you, and your heart will, even if it's the caboose, will follow you on that journey. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to, I'm going to have you send me an email, seth@thethinkingatheist.com. I'm going to send you a copy of my personal story, Deconverted. I just want to send it to you. It's not Hitchens, all right? It's not a brilliant book, but you and I have walked a lot of the same steps, right? We both believe in the Christian God. We both believe in the Bible. We're both raised evangelical. We both were heavily indoctrinated. We both have gone through that valley of doubt. We're both have experienced those moments where you think, what if I get it wrong? I don't want to go to hell. And we both are terrified of hell in some way. Well, I'll bet you are able to relate enough to my story that it might actually encourage you in your story. Would that be something you're interested in if I was to shoot something your direction?
Absolutely. I think that it's really beautiful to see, like what Sarah said, she kind of came out here, was like, you guys are great. And I feel the same way, even in my heart as well, because if it wasn't for people challenging these things, I don't think I would have ever been able to escape. It just kind of becomes hell to you, because you also learn that to fear God is to revere God. So you're kind of like, you have this fear in your heart as a believer when an atheist comes and you believe that's righteousness. It also tells you, I think in somewhere in Micah, to not trust your mind. It legit says that.
Can you imagine, though?
And that,
Can you imagine that a God gave you a curious and rational mind and then said, don't use it, don't trust it, right?
yeah.
The less
And
it makes
I think
sense, the more it does make sense. So,
And I think also it just, when you begin to, it also says to go by faith. And this is like a huge argument. Like, this is where the atheists, kind of get the upper hand. Because the fact that, Matt says it all the time, and it might be kind of irritating at this point, but you can believe anything off of faith, So it's just really, challenging. And I believe you understand, and I do want to read your story.
yeah,
But
I mean, it sounds to me, it sounds to me like your mind is already latching on to what fits. It's just giving your heart permission to follow on the journey. Just the vibe I'm getting for us talking. I mean, you don't talk like a devout believer. You don't even really talk like a believer. Now, I'm not trying to say who you are. You talk like someone who's a skeptic, and that's a good place to be. And you can make the promise to anybody within earshot. Look, I'm not out to kill God. I just want to know what's true. Whatever the truth is, let's go do that. And then give yourself permission to take that journey. And if the answer comes back that, there's no evidence for any God, to be honest with yourself about it. And the second thing I want to say, and I want to leave you with this, is that you are not broken. Non-heterosexuality is an absolutely natural and healthy expression of sexuality, not just in the human species, but in hundreds of species all around the planet. We see non-heterosexuality relationships that don't fit that biblical model. We see them in nature everywhere we look. Who you are, what you are, how you are is perfectly legitimate as anybody else. You have value. You shouldn't ever beat yourself up for acknowledging what you feel, what your attractions are, what your desires are in your heart and in your mind, and embracing who you are instead of feeling shame. I don't want you to live a life riddled with shame. I want you to look at yourself and see something that has value and beauty and that deserves so much more than to be jammed into someone else's cookie cutter. You are important just the way you are, and you should never change for any of us. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate that so much. Last thing I'll say is about being gay. It's hard because we're also taught to look at the world and see gay people as like it's an agenda. They're trying to be accepted, but we have to fight them. We have to fight these people. It's like, now that I'm stepping out of it, I'm like, it's this invisible war, and it makes no sense to me. But thank you for that, because you never get told that by God. I don't think the Bible does have some good things, bad things, but acceptance is not there whatsoever.
Acceptance for just who you are isn't. Yeah, that's not really Yahweh's calling card. It's
the opposite.
Yeah. It's funny. My best friend came out to me as gay when I was in my 30s. I think it was late 20s, something like that. And I was a devout Christian, and I was going through that same stuff. They are gays are going to hell. gays are condemned by God. And I remember projecting that onto him. I was worried for his eternal soul, and can we ever even be friends, and any of those types of things. And then I realized that, the problem wasn't Corey. The problem was me. The problem was the church. The problem was my faith. They wanted everyone to be like them. And differences, variations, things that didn't fit inside this mold, this religious mold, they just wouldn't process. And when I stepped out of that mold and I accepted Corey for who he is, we established a relationship, an even tighter bond than we'd ever had before. And we've been friends for almost 40 years, my friend. There is love and acceptance out there. Just remember that on your own journey, okay?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
And
I appreciate
send me
it.
a message, or if you can, if you want. I'm trying to think. I can't get your info here because I don't have a direct chat, but send me a message, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com, and let me send you my story, and in the hopes that it will encourage you in your journey, okay?
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking my call.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. You take care.
You too. Bye.
I have goosebumps like on my arms. Like when I hear someone being so transparent, their lives are really a difficult and yet amazing journey. And they're on this precipice where, will the future open up to a point where they can embrace themselves and say, I do have value, and I'm not going to be an echo of somebody else's voice, and I am going to go figure it out, and I am going to ask the tough questions, and I am going to be me for the reasons I choose, and I'm going to assign my own sense of purpose, and I'm not going to walk in somebody else's shoes for the rest of my life, somebody else's path. I'm going to go out, and I'm going to take a shovel, I'm going to carve a path of my own for my reasons without apology, damn it. I mean, is he right there, right on the precipice of that? I certainly hope so. But ultimately, if he's giving himself permission to take the journey on his own terms, that's an important first step. So anyway, that's pretty amazing stuff. Two more. 850, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Stephanie in Pensacola.
Hi, Stephanie. Talk to me. What's on your mind?
I had a quick question, but first I just need to say that I'm just so proud of David for calling in and sharing this story, and I'm thankful for your response. Just as a fellow atheist and a fellow non-heterosexual person, I couldn't imagine calling in at his age and expressing all of that so honestly and clearly, and I'm just really proud of him and thankful for his time, and I hope he's really happy with his call.
See? You see, David? We got backup immediately on the next call on the switchboard. So there's a tremendous number of people out here who have your back. Thanks for saying that. What else did you have on your mind today?
I remember a while back on Facebook you mentioned about maybe doing a stream about polyamory.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to ask, is that something you're still thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a show on polyamory. I'm interested in it. It's, everyone fashions their relationship in a different way, but I know that there's a lot of polyamorous people in atheist circles. Would you say that's correct?
I've gotten that impression also. I personally am in a monogamous relationship, but I am in total support of any enthusiastically consenting relationship.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
So I think it should definitely be out there more.
Resonates with you. I'm sort of in your corner. Did you come out of religion yourself?
Yes. I think I talked to you not too long ago. I'm the one that said I was kind of half-raised Catholic.
Oh, yeah. Well, so you know what it's like.
You said that you wanted to shake my dad's hand.
You know what it's like to stand in judgment of other people and what they do in the bedroom. And, that's just not natural, that kind of talk, right?
Well, actually, no. I've never really been that judgmental.
And you came out of Catholicism?
Yes.
Okay.
I definitely dealt with some of the shame.
Yeah.
But I myself, was an atheist at a very early age, and I did go through at first, the idea of like, okay, I'm not heterosexual. That's not good according to what I'm being told. But then after a while, I realized, like, okay, there are people who aren't straight. Like at first, I was like, okay, you can be either gay or straight. Like at a very early age, that's the first impression I got. And at first, of course, I got the impression that many people do not like that people are gay. But of course, I was able to relate that to the fact that, okay, there's racist people too. Like people can be wrong. People make bad judgments.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to do a show on polyamory. I'm interested in it, not for my own life. I'm in a monogamous relationship. Natalie and we were committed pretty much we're committed exclusively to each other. But I'm interested because we've been talking about how do you make that work? Is there ever jealousy involved if you're in a relationship with multiple partners? And what are the emotional dynamics at play in a polyamorous union? And those types of things. And I've got a bunch of people on tap who want to participate, they're like, I'm in one or I came out of one and I want to talk about it. So I think I'll probably schedule that for the end of September, maybe first part of October sometime. So keep your ears open for that, okay?
Okay, awesome. I actually watched a video a while back by someone named Cyrus the Skeptic on YouTube. He's also an atheist in a polyamorous relationship, and he just did a great video just explaining everything.
What's the name? Because I might want to connect with this person for the show.
On YouTube, he's known as Cyrus the Skeptic. That's S-U-R-I-S.
S-U-R-I-S. All right, let me reach out and I'll see if maybe
Skeptic, yep.
Cyrus the Skeptic. All right, I'll reach out and see if maybe Cyrus wants to participate in that discussion here in about a month or so, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, you take care. Let's do one more. 979. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thank you so much for waiting. Who's this?
Yes, this is Jonathan Wilson from Texas.
Jonathan, are you in the car?
No, I'm in my room. I just have the fan going.
Okay. Do you desperately need the fan? It's kind of hard to hear you, my friend. And turn your radio down.
Oh, is it echoing? Hold on.
Put it on speaker.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. For the record, say your name again.
My name is Jonathan Wilson. I'm from Texas.
Jonathan, what's on your mind today?
I'm actually a newer atheist. I've been an atheist for a little bit over a week. My question was, what's the best advice you could give a newer atheist?
Well, that's a broad question. I mean, a new atheist that came out of fundamentalist religion?
I was actually a Christian for 15 years. Then I dabbled in Satanism and then paganism and just lost all faith in theistic religion.
Well, I think the advice to the new atheist would be the same advice I'd give to someone who's been an atheist their entire lives. Just, make every day a discovery. Ask the hard questions. Try to live your life as truthfully as possible. Don't forget your own humanity when you're out there swimming through the mountain of data, separating the true from the false. And don't forget to live your life. If we realize that there's no evidence for a heaven, that means we absolutely should maximize the moments we have on planet Earth. And I think sometimes we forget that. We get so busy punching the clock and arguing on Twitter and doing the stuff that, sort of diminishes us. We forget that, if there is no tomorrow, that we should remember the good stuff, love who you love and find the good music and take the trip and pursue the goal and achieve the dream and make life absolutely the most it can be, because there is no evidence that there's a life 2.0 to come after that. That would be the advice I'd give for what it's worth. Okay?
Okay, thanks. I also have another question right quick.
Mm-hmm.
What books would you recommend that I check out? Right now, all I have is on Origin of Species by Charles Darwin and Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism by Aaron Roth.
What are you trying to accomplish with the books? What do you want? What are you looking for?
I'm trying to basically, of course, I still struggle with the creationism thing, so I'm trying to try to get my brain to accept more of like, hey, this stuff didn't come out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a bunch of good stuff. I've mentioned earlier in the show, Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion is a masterpiece. Okay? So even if it's not at the top of your reading list, it should be on your list. If you're into
I
Bible,
actually have that on audiobook.
okay, fantastic. If you're into religious criticism, getting into the Bible, Dan Barker's got a great book called The Most Unpleasant Character in All Fiction, which debunks the
Okay.
idea of a good God. I'm a huge fan of Carl Sagan and the Demon Haunted World.
Hmm.
I don't know. There's so much good stuff. I tell you, on my website, thethinkingatheist.com, there's a tab that says links. And you'll find YouTube videos, you'll find podcasts, and you'll also find a series of books that are designed as introductions, the toe in the water, to religious skepticism and science education. That page is much better than any short list I could give you on the radio. Thethinkingatheist.com, and then go to links, and you'll see the books listed there with their covers, and you can browse and decide which one you want. And I've linked to the Amazon pages so you can just purchase from there, okay?
And I also wanted to thank you for, being so kind and everything. I've watched the podcast on and off every once in a while. And, watching your podcast and Mr. Atheist's podcast and the Atheist Experience has actually started to kind of just made me think more rationally than more on a religious side.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thanks for the kind words. It means a lot. And you keep kicking, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I've got one more in the queue. Let's talk. Area code 210. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hello, I go by Lilith. I'm calling from Texas. I just want to tell you a little bit about how, I got into atheism and such. I was actually, I read through the Bible and I saw that it supported a lot of stuff like slavery and misogyny, and I'm black, so you already know how I feel about slavery. But one question I wanted to ask you real quick is, what do you think when, I don't know how to put this. I'm a little bit nervous. The religious views of others stop you from being you, or it stops your family from loving you, or something of that nature, when they use it to kind of dictate who you are, because I'm transgender, and they don't like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would probably be a reiteration of what I've said earlier in the show. Life's too short to be someone else's echo, to be an authentic person, to live your life, pursue truth authentically on your terms. And the idea that somebody else determines your identity is just crazy. Life's too short and beautiful not to be who you are. And if that means you express yourself sexually or your sexual identity is this, great. That's you, and that's a beautiful thing. And you have value and worth. And to remember that. And if it makes other people uncomfortable, that's a reflection on them. It's not a reflection on you. It's insecure people who want everybody to look and sound and speak and act as they look and sound and speak and act, because they want validation and reinforcement. They want to see reflections of themselves in the world they live in. But the secure people, the people who really get it, they're the ones who can look at diverse humanity and say, hey, that's amazing. Someone's different than me, and it's beautiful. In fact, there's a video I have on YouTube that's called Something Beautiful. It's a 4-minute video that's narrated by Nathan Phelps that sort of sums up my perspective on all of this. To be able to look at a diverse world filled with differences and smile and say, isn't that something beautiful? So when you look in the mirror, I hope that's what you see as well. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much for your time, and I just want to let you know you're a nice, intelligent person, and your YouTube channel has helped me very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching and listening. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry. Thank you so much to everybody for your calls, for participating. Thanks to everybody in the chat who has been showing so much support. And I know that this is a community. At the end of the day, yeah, there's content to watch and to listen to, but it's really about the connection of human beings, people from all around the world who have each other's backs and are supporting each other's right to be who they are, to learn, to grow, to challenge each other, to be better tomorrow than we are today, to live an authentic life. Man, that's what we want to see for everybody. Thanks again. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you back here next time.